I've always loved history. Learning about the past should be interesting for everyone, but we don't always learn the most captivating information in school. Sure, the French Revolution resulted in massive cultural and economic changes, but it also resulted in the famous Madame Tussauds Wax Figure Museum. Or take William the Conqueror, for example. He was leader of the Normans, but when he died, his body swelled up so much at his funeral that it exploded in the high heat. The history we are taught in class is important, but it isn't fun. So here are some interesting facts and events that did not come out of a global history textbook. Let's start with the Founding Fathers. According to AmericanHistory.com, George Washington never went to college. He never really would have gotten even a high school education by today's standards, and he had a very low IQ. A strange coincidence is that John Adams, George Washington, and Thomas Jefferson, and James Monroe all died on July 4th. Even though Washington is famous for his horrible teeth and false dentures, he ordered that his servants wash his horse's teeth every single day. And then we come to Abraham Lincoln. Our school's founded after him, and he was a pretty awesome guy. But he was incredibly unorganized and very messy. He stored his important papers in his top hat. He was also a riverboat pilot and a wrestler, much different than we're told with the little funny Lincoln who grew up in a log cabin. Teddy Roosevelt kept a zoo in his White House, including a tiger, bear, zebra, lion, hyena, a six-toed cat, and a one-legged chicken. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt wore dresses until he was 5 years old. Yes, the President of the United States during World War II wore dresses. This brings me to my next point, involving generally unknown reasons and superstitions why society behaves the way it does today. Let's start with superstitions. First, there was the evil eye, which is why FDR is dressed like a little girl. It used to be that if you looked at someone in the eye, you would be sucking the healthy souls out of their child, which is why today we say it's not polite to stare. So mothers would dress up their little boys as little girls because the evil eye didn't like girls. Walking under ladders is also considered unlucky because Jesus died on a cross with a ladder laying across it. And then there's the calendars. Today we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But they originated from Norse and Greek and Roman names: Moon Day, Tuesday, Wotan's Day, Thor's Day, Freya Day, Saturn Day, and Sunday. However, the Catholic Church banned these pagan names and Freya, which brings me to Friday the 13th. Freya was the goddess of fertility and love, but the church didn't want those ideas being spread around. So because Friday honored Freya, it was banned, and 13 was considered a lucky number. Alright, so our beliefs and customs are influenced by past superstitions, but as it turns out, so are many of the childhood games we used to play. First, there's jump rope. When sailors would make heavy ropes for their ships, they would be spinning the twine so fast that making a wrong step could result in decapitation, and no one wants that. So they had to learn to jump over the ropes to save their own neck. Then there's the yo-yo, everyone's favorite. It was a Philippine hunting weapon, but when an American explorer found it, he thought it would make a fun toy, just minus the sharp razor spikes that would catch the animal. And finally, there's silly putty. In World War II, there was a rubber shortage, and chemical engineers were trying to make rubber substitutes, and that was where silly putty came from. The Army didn't want it because it was too stretchy, but the inventor gave it to his kids in Easter eggs, which is where the eggs come from. But I just think it's so funny how I used to play with yo-yos like there was no tomorrow, but actually it used to be a weapon. But more about history. The following are related to topics we have studied in school, but are facts we never learned. Where would we be without electricity? We are always under the impression that Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, when in fact he didn't. It was actually invented in France several years before Edison introduced it to the Americas, which is why Paris is called the City of Light. Now, Edison came up with a kind of electricity called DC, direct current. And another inventor, George Westinghouse, had AC. AC was better, but Edison didn't want to admit that it was better. So he blackmailed Westinghouse, inventing the horrible electric chair to prove that AC was dangerous, when in fact it was safer. So even though Edison was a great guy, he was a bit of a criminal. And then there's Einstein, my personal favorite scientist. His brain was lost for 20 years, but they finally found it in 2 jars labeled apple cider. but they had brain in it. And then there's the Aztecs. Everyone knows about their sacrifices and pulling the hearts out of their sacrificial victims, but they also ate their sacrificial victims, which is something not many people know. There was always a food shortage because their empire was so huge, and they tried raising chihuahuas for food, but there's not too much meat on those puppies. For most students, writing a history report is like listening to fingernails screeching down a chalkboard for hours, but it doesn't have to be so painful. History is full of gross, wacky, and interesting information. You just have to know where to look for it. Trust me, throwing in a few fun facts never hurt my history grade. So dig a little deeper, and any tedious task can be made more fun.